d'enfant. C'est beau de rire à sa liberté. Jamais les filles et les garçons ne chanteront la même chanson. Sur bien des choses encore, ils ne sont pas d'accord, pas d'accord. C'est beau la mer, l'aventure. C'est bien plus beau d'être heureux chez soi. Et piloter des voitures. Nous on préfère flâner dans les bois. Jamais les filles et les garçons ne chanteront la même chanson. Sur bien des choses encore, ils ne sont jamais d'accord. La 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 la, la 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 C'est beau l'amour en été, sur un voilier entre ciel et mer. C'est beau l'amour en hiver, pris par les neiges au cœur d'un chalet. C'est beau l'amour en toutes saisons, quand on est deux filles et garçons. Et sur ce point, enfin, on se comprend et on s'entend très bien.
All right.
Hi, everybody. I guess I'm just going to start. Hi, thank you so
Oh,
much for everybody coming.
hi. Thank you so much. Oh,
And I know that, some of you, are, used to, you're used to utilizing your ears for a lot of things. And, but for this specifically, I'm going to be presenting. I ask you please just pay attention to me. So that way, we can follow along together with the interpreter's voice. I know most of the time, it's easy to multitask, but I'm going to be signing. So it's going to be important that you keep your focus up here as well, while I'm teaching today's lesson or the workshop. Okay. Are we all ready to go? Well, I'm going to be doing a couple of things right here first and foremost, and we'll get started. I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Joan?
oh,
Joan?
sorry. I was just going to, just 1 second here.
Sure, no problem.
Hi,
Sorry, I just
everyone.
thought we were ready to go and start.
I just want to welcome everyone for this amazing event for sign language and comics, and I'm so glad to have all of you here. My name is Joan Zahra Dark. I am your host for this Nibbin Inkfest event that we're doing, our last day of Nibbin Inkfest events. I'm so excited to have you here. I wanted to briefly mention for everyone joining over Zoom that we have captions running in the Zoom window for anyone that needs them. There will also be a transcript available for anyone who would like that after the fact. Um, and yeah, if you uh, need any more information, you can always check out everything we have running at nif.cartoonist.com. But yes, I would love to bring it over to Annie, a deaf Midwest based cartoonist and ASL translator with a knack for doing lectures about her favorite subjects. Take it away, Annie.
Okay, wonderful. Hello. Yeah, I'll keep on going and just basically, what I was telling you, the most important thing that you can possibly do is just pay attention to the signs. So we'll go ahead and begin now. I know you might be scared or some kind of apprehension about this, but you're not going to be missing it much or anything while I'm presenting. You'll be able to understand me a little bit better. We have um, this to go ahead and be interpreted. So even if you don't know, some science or anything, I'll be showing you some stuff during this as well. And go ahead and try your best. So, there's some other things as well too, that you can type in, that very are popular as well. And if you don't know any, that's fine as well. Yeah, I mean, just something that if it's fine that if you don't know anything, or if you do, you don't take a guess. Okay, I see some of these answers. Okay, I'm trying to remember. That's actually a good one. Yeah, that's a good question too. Okay. Well, all right. Okay. Let me see. There's one more. Okay. That's a great answer too. All right. All right. Okay, cool. We'll go ahead and take it right there. Um, I wasn't sure about how you'd answer, how you'd type, but let's go ahead and take a look at this, and see some of those answers. That's really great. And it's really interesting to see how the range of different answers and, the guesses and everything. So while, this presentation goes on, I'm wondering what the answer is going to look like after this is all said and done. So first, I want to go ahead and say welcome, and I want to be able to, again, I'm going off my script and everything, a little bit stage fright. So I'm going to try to review my notes real quick. The camera shut off real quick. Let me see. Okay, now I'm back on. Beautiful. Okay, so this presentation is pretty much all about science, and comics and different things, like head movement and the language itself. It's not just so simple. During this presentation, I'll be, going over a different range of things and how to show with explanation and manage that information will be applied to other languages as well, other sign languages. So just pay attention while we will set up the foundation for what we're going to be learning today. And it's going to be all about language and how it applies to cartoons and comics. So, just to give you a little bit about myself, my name is Annie, and I do have a sign name, um, but it's a little bit related to my government name, and I'm not willing to share that one. And if you recognize me, shush, okay? Because this is a secret who I am, and I'm not a robot, and I was actually, I went to Gallaudet University, and I had a multi-generational deaf family, and we graduated from these colleges, and I got into the comic creator scene for about over a decade, and I'm also a ASL translator as well. And I've been doing this for a while now, and I actually, work for such comics like City of Blank by 66 and Suited Armor. Now, the purpose behind this presentation is for us to go ahead and discuss the signing and representation. It's not only applicable to the signing or deaf community, but it's representation. If you came here for, said representation, I apologize, unfortunately, but I'm only going to be discussing a few things. And that's due to, lack of time and resources. You see that in the signing community, it's so broad. I'm a singular person who's white, who's a cis woman, and hails from one type of deaf background. And it wouldn't be fair for me to be able to list everything out because I don't have the expertise in that yet. So now for today, we're just going to be covering various topics, like listed out right here on the slides. And of course, we'll be doing a Q&A if we have enough time. And to start off with, we're going to be doing some common misconceptions. I made this section based on what I've actually seen online over the years. And I was like, you know what, this is it. Like, let's go ahead and stop this right here, all this misinformation. And see, ASL is not the only signed language. I want to go ahead and make sure that's very understood. You might be thinking like, oh, well, I know different things, or before you might say something like, oh, not me. Like I know that that's not a universal thing, but even recently, I'm dead serious. People have thought that there's only one form of sign language. My guess is basically because of how Americanization within the English speaking side of the internet has contributed to that, and that's a common misconception. But do you know what the actual most common sign language is? It's Indo-Pakistani sign language. That's the most commonly used sign language. And can you guess how many sign languages there are altogether? Take a guess. Take a random guess. I want to see some answers and some guesses. Oh, that's a good guess. That's a really good guess right there. I think there's how many different countries have, I mean, that's a good guess right there. So that's also a really good one. Okay, well, the answer would be surprising probably. There's over 300 different sign languages in the world. Yeah, globally, there's over 300 sign languages. And that's signed by more than, 72 million people. That's so crazy, right? There's so many different languages out there. And, honestly, comparatively to English, there's multiple sign languages used in English speaking countries like ASL, Auslan, even British Sign Language. They have their own sign language, and it depends on region and country. And they have so many different languages that have regional accents as well. We usually sign it like this, a regional accent. But, for example, I was raised in California and we have the word trash and it's signed a certain way. This is the time for trash in a different country. So when you're talking about, I'm going to go over here and imagine what, someone came up to me and they're looking to take the garbage out, but really like the garbage sign for garbage somewhere else is the trash for sign for trash here in Southern California. So you wouldn't even know what you're doing. You're like, excuse me, what do you mean take out the cabbage? So this sign right here is the same conveyance in a different country. Like this is trash, but even in Texas, that's a different sign. That's a regional sign. And if you go to another example for different regional accents and sign language, deaf have their own regional accents, which is quite interesting. I grew up, with my family. We were signing the different words for different signs, and we would think nothing of it. But then we got over to one year we went over to somewhere else, and we were signing my name and different years, and we didn't realize that we had practiced different versions of a language, and that was regional. But compared to a different country, moving to a different country from like Russia, let's say, and we learn ASL, we had to integrate some of the signs that we had from like Russia, from a different country, and the way we sign is completely different from how they sign. And sometimes I can't exactly explain the differences. But regional accents come from a lot of different countries, like BSL or BASL, like Black ASL. So a lot of African Americans have their own way of signing their version of sign language because it comes from a different background. It's something that's not universal. There's not just one language. History has a plethora of them.
Okay, there's another common misconception about sign languages. It isn't the same with their spoken language counterparts. That's where there's a huge misunderstanding that often comes from. Non-signers, from my experience, tend to assume that it's heavily based on their spoken or written language, but it's really with hand usage instead. That's the furthest from the truth. And this is really a harmful assumption. It causes people to search for signs, leading to a lot of mistakes on their work. So simply Googling for a sign for cat in sign language may yield you the correct result. But honestly, how do you know if you haven't learned the linguistics of that particular sign language you're looking for? And the best analogy I can make is it's just like the issue with Google Translate. It's a given that you shouldn't rely on Google Translate to represent a language you don't know in your work. So, where did this confidence come from when it came to sign language? Technically, yes. There is such means like signed exact English versus pidgin signed English, which is pronounced as SEE or PSE, but I'm not going to delve into the nuances of that for today. You see, just like any other languages, sign languages have their own grammatical structure. The best way for me to describe it is, let me use something called ASL gloss. ASL gloss is the written version of American Sign Language or sign languages, and the best way is to look at ASL grammar. You can see how different both sentences are. So I can sign the same concept into different ways with the proper English phrase saying, me and my friend went to the store. In ASL, we go us, went, store. Us, go to the store. It's extremely different than my friend and I went to the store. We use the term us. And that is the biggest aspect of American Sign Language grammar that is essential to trimming the fat while retaining the key signs that will provide enough information without the extra words such as and, the, to, etc. So again, we're really looking at American Sign Language that trims a lot of the extra terms, such as us went to store versus my friend and I went to the store. It's very efficient. So I'm not sure if you noticed that. There's its own particular grammar. Sometimes we have different signs for the same exact word. For example, what it is like to be in California versus I like cats. So we're looking particularly at the term like, and I'll sign both of them. I like California versus I like cats. However, this is assigned on the chest as like, but they have two different concepts. So if you swap either sign, like it no longer means the same thing. It has different purposes. The first one stands for a feeling and less for interpersonal context, such as I feel like I want to stay home versus I like cheese, right? I like cheese. Another one is a personal affection. So now if I were to switch both, I feel like I want to stay home. Or, okay, that feels so wrong. I like cheese. This other sign for like, which is kind of like a back and forth motion, I'm basically saying I'm feeling exactly as a piece of cheese would feel like. What does it feel like to be a cheese? Right? It doesn't make sense. Um, yeah. So the next part to this. Sometimes we use the same sign but with different emphasis, which then really emphasizes tone. It's proportional to looking like at a using cap locks or caps when you're representing text, right? Just like suitor armor, he told her no, but she persisted, so he had to say it again out of anger and annoyance, right? There's an emphasis in the no. You use the capitalization of the text. And this is how you write it in comics. Sometimes you'll enlarge the text to emphasize that yelling. This also applies to using facial expressions in sign language. Facial expressions are the most crucial part of sign languages. For such a word such as finish, I'll sign it twice so that you could see the difference in the facial expression. Finish, I'm done, versus enough, finish. I don't know if you're able to tell the difference versus like, I'm happy, I'm done, I've completed, I've gone to New York, I finished, versus enough, serious, you need to stop that, right? There's a more angry tone, but that is conveyed through the facial expression. It has its own grammatical features in sign language. Again, what I've provided is a very superficial and more surface information when it comes to sign language. Otherwise, we'll be here all day if I try to give you the different aspects to show tone, because talking about topics such as sign orders, classifiers, spatial knowledge, slangs, and so many more other categories would take all day. I do try my best to hold myself back, but honestly, the main point is that it's in American Sign Language and other sign languages are its own language that is evolving beyond a tool of accessibility. Right? You're able to see that versus enough, and I'm done. So now we're going to go towards signing representation. A couple of important things you should know before you proceed with your writing your character. Some important questions to ask yourself before writing your character, as their background can actually affect the way that they sign or their signing level in terms of their proficiency. First thing you can ask yourself is this character deaf, hard of hearing, mute, or a coda, a child of a deaf adult? Another question is sign language their main or their secondary language? Did they learn sign language from birth, or are they trying to learn it late in life? Or are they using it because someone else in their life is deaf and requires or utilizes sign language, right? So for deaf people and people who are a part of the deaf culture, they tend to have a natural instinct when it comes to the utilization and fluency of sign language in terms of sign grammar, classifiers, spatial knowledge, and facial expressions. While people who learn sign language later in life or maybe only use the language for specific situations, you notice the trend that they tend to be slower, fingerspell more often, and don't know sign grammar or other things that come intuitively. So again, now thinking about which sign language to use for your character. It really has to be based on your story setting. For example, in Uriah by Tofuo, everyone signs in Swedish sign language as the comic is based in Sweden. So if you're trying to make your story a fantasy, then you can either trace excuse me. So if you wanted to do fantasy, then this is what you can do, is trace to the inspiration. So we can ask, is it a fairy tale with influences of Renaissance time periods, sign language from a European country? Maybe something like French Sign Language could possibly fit that setting. To be clear, I know that sign language history is going to be different from modern day European sign language, but this is a matter of making the best of what we have to work for. So, for another example, action manga is typically based in fictional Japan. If that's what you want to do, then maybe you look at Japanese sign language. That would be the best fit. If maybe you're looking at Greek mythology romance, you could look at Greek sign language. My suggestion mainly comes from the intention of providing realistic translation to make your comics world building feel more real. So if it's a sci-fi or high fantasy story taking place in a completely made up setting, you can use your own country's sign language or whatever sign language you most feel comfortable using. So in Anthragon by Purrata, a fantasy story, Avery uses ASL as the author only knows ASL and is from the United States. So if you want to sign the match with the speech bubbles, for example, then you've got to keep that in mind. This is a hot topic in today's culture or today's time. There's a lot of common mistakes that we see often, specifically the ones that are considered taboo that you should avoid. So the first thing is do not make up signs. In some minds, it makes sense in narrative to draw random hand shapes to represent a perspective of someone who doesn't understand it, or rather as a shortcut to show what they're signing. Do not do that. That is a hard stop. And that includes creating your own fantasy sign language. No matter what the intention is, there will be impact that is made. The reason behind this is that deaf people are still being discriminated against still to this day. There were many attempts actually to ban sign language throughout history. Deaf children are still suffering from language deprivation. And made up signs are always used as a means of mockery. I've had people come up to me and my friends try to create sign languages as a form of attempting to bond. And I've still seen people in filmmaking or on TikTok mocking sign language. And really, it's enough. So please refrain from drawing random hand shapes. And do not mention that you could end up accidentally drawing a sign that is possibly offensive. The other thing too is don't obscure the signs. With some expectations, such as my clients' comics, where the characters are already using ASL throughout the story, until this point where the character Belle was starting to freak out and signing too fast for Rex to follow, this gag makes perfect sense to create some kind of obscurity because it's what will be reflected in real life. In my fast-paced work, I was nicknamed Speedy Gonzalez from Looney Tunes due to how fast my signs can get. And I'll add, so sometimes it's hilarious. Yeah. So again, people call me Speedy Gonzalez, right? People could not follow because I am just a fast-paced signer. It makes sense in that context if someone is basing a character off of me. Again, I want to emphasize that there are a range of variety of ways people do sign. And we don't want to obscure all forms of sign language in your comics unless it makes sense based off of the context. Okay. So the next thing is extremely important. So I'm going to handhold you a little bit as I say this. Okay, let's hold our hands. All right. I'm holding your hands. Just imagine me holding your hands right now. I hear someone putting the emojis of hand holding. I love that. Y'all are the best. This is great. I love this. Thank you. Yes, lucky. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my script. I'm sorry. Y'all are hilarious. I see all the handshaking emoji as a hand holding. This is the best. Okay. Okay. All right. Back to my presentation. So as I was saying, this is extremely important. So here we are holding hands, as you have already posted in the chat. All right. We are holding hands. Please, please do not give your character a sign name. Do not. I'm emphasizing this especially if you're not a deaf or a native signer. And the reason behind this is that that is a form of cultural appropriation by giving somebody a deaf sign name. Deaf sign names are sacred to the deaf community. The process has its own rules, and to assign someone a sign name as a gift is a form of gift. It is a gift of being welcomed and being a part of the community. So if you have a deaf character and it makes sense for them to have a sign name, please consult a deaf consultant. I can't guarantee that the consultant will give you a sign name for the character because, again, it's more of a personal thing, not a transaction. I'm going to be 100% blunt with you all. It's the bare minimum for you to get involved if you ever do decide to write about a deaf character. Get involved with the deaf community. That's what it'll require. Okay, time for some tips. I'm going to give a disclaimer. I don't intend to have those tips to be established as the ironclad of rules for comic creators, especially because, again, I'm a singular person with my own opinions, and rules are meant to be broken, right? So instead, it's what I've been seeing some trends thus far, and I want to share some aspects that I personally believe can be improved. I'm going to start off with action lines. I've been seeing creators using arrows to convey the signs, and I understand the intention behind this, but I personally don't like it. And here are a couple of reasons, so hear me out. First thing is that arrows are usually used to teach sign language. If you don't know sign language, nor are you qualified to create illustrations to teach, that doesn't mean you're qualified to create illustrations to teach it either. That's going to cause misunderstandings. Like, trust me, I've seen some illustrated signs that got me like this. And that brings me to my second concern. Everyone's perspectives are different. You can see how I've managed to chum out several ways to show my favorite signs here. Finished, right? There are 3 ways, and technically all could be right depending on how you see it. So the last thing might be a bit off topic, but in comics, you don't use arrows to convey action. For example, you don't draw a character drinking a glass of water with an arrow, right? And I like to believe that that should also apply to sign language. After all, comics are a visual medium full of snapshots. So instead of arrows, I would recommend you start using action lines. So that way it's easier to keep up with the story's immersion. And I can't tell you the number of times I've already seen arrows thrown at me out of the immersion because it makes me want to sign it out for myself to see if it's correct whenever I see arrows. So with the expectation of exhibiting sign language in a scene that has the intention of teaching, for example, a scene where 2 friends are studying sign language together, and you want readers to be a part of that. Rather than throwing them out of the context. You want them to be fully immersed in that scene where 2 friends are there helping one another study, taking care of one another. So to sum it up, save the arrows for teaching moments, not for showing the scene in the action. Use the action lines. So for the speech bubbles, I personally use a different format for sign language, but you can, as long as the pointer should point in both hands and face to convey the entire language using facial expressions. You can see the example right here. You can use angle brackets for the text, just like how you would for translated text in comics. And lastly, I can't believe I have to say this, but please, 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 please don't use sign language fonts. The ones with finger-spelled hand shapes. Just write it as it is. Okay, as if I've been emphasizing anything but breaking the immersion as a result of that. If you don't want non-signers to know, you can just remove the speech bubbles instead. Because with such fonts, you'll get used to you'll get used to not reading the story and you're just trying to decipher what they're saying, right? We're nosy, right? We get it. Okay, so for the rest of the presentation, I'll be exhibiting some of the panels for my clients. Okay, anyways, this is throwing me off here. The comments, they're great. I'll be using examples from the panels of my client from 66 Comics, City of Blanks. The panels that I've personally directed. This is the majority of my translation work that I've done in the past couple of years. So with the side comments about how you can show sign languages in your comics. Anyways, the best way to learn anything related is to have your eyes on actual visible examples, right? So another good example of ASL grammar is here. Rex is signing explain as a substitute for the entire English word or sentence. How I put this. We summarize it in one sign as explain. So now you can see how he's saying this like right here. If I were to swap the likes that I mentioned earlier, the one from the chest versus the one out in front of you, Rex would be blushing as if he were to say, I like, which doesn't make sense in the story context. These panels are wonderful examples of how you should put in random signs with no dialogues without mocking the sign language. The reason for this is because it's randomized real signs, right? 66 asked me to give them random signs, so I'm up for the task. And you can see that he's saying fish. Yeah, they're actually talking about fish. And you guys can guess what the sign names. Can you guess what this means?
Exactly. Yeah, snail. That's what it is. And the answer is snail. The inside joke is pretty much that Belle was asking him if he'll love her even if she were to turn into a snail. Hence, his answer being, of course, of course. And this is the best way because with real signs, you can easily slip in hidden messages for signage to notice, and it makes the world building feel more multidimensional as your characters are having private conversations. I mean, who doesn't love putting in a hidden thing throughout the comic, right? It's one of the few rare moments where I find it justified to involve multiple signs and stops, which I'm fond of, especially when Belle said one dance. I gave her both signs to match the speech bubble, which indicates two big bolded words with a period. So she gets two big bolded signs. One dance. And another interesting thing to share too is that this is a proper sign. We usually use signs like this, like one, two, three, four, five, and such. See how it's an ordinal shape? And this calls for that exaggerated kind of a sign, which is when I turn it to emphasize what she wants. One dance. And the next panel, he's signing recording. And those signs, I don't think, um, I mean, they don't really give it justice to where one snapshot of it, such as that sign right there. It's kind of like this. Suddenly, I had an idea, like doing it layering, like the previous point of reference. And ta-da, a sign of recording. So this is definitely one of those things where the foundational comic knowledge came in handy. And then lastly, a name sign. I gave Rex a name sign, and it was an easy decision because it was his name in short. It's always going to be fingerspelled, and in the story, his first language is sign language. So, of course, for someone who only uses sign language for most of his life, well, he need a name sign, of course. And I love how I came up with that for him, fingerspelled that name, Rex, because it's always usually fingerspelled, so it's smooth and natural. And lastly, you guys should read this comic on Webtoon or when its printed version comes out because it's very good to like, kind of come about to the end soon. So, well, that concludes the crash course, but not so fast, because let me see what y'all have to say about this one. Let's say you have a character who communicates in a language that you don't know. What are you gonna do? Go type it out. Go ahead. I'll wait. Well, that's interesting. That's a good one right there. Okay. Hmm. Those are some interesting answers that you have. Well, at the end of it, someone said to get a translator. And that's really good because, during the course of this presentation, it's been, I'm tired of people, they just assume or they guess, like all sign languages are different. But you should get a translator. And making this presentation, I've got to really be real with you guys. I'm tired of hearing people underestimating sign languages. It's beautiful, it's rich, it's full of history, and all sign languages deserve the same level of respect and the nuance, just like any other spoken language. So, and I see you. If you can't afford a translator, which I completely get, I understand. But the whole point is equal access. And, if you can't afford it, that's understandable. But that brings us to another point I want to make. For example, if you were to write an indie comic with a character who occasionally speaks, let's say, Spanish, well, will you find a budget for a translator? Or will you seek out someone who can proofread it? Whenever your answer, or whatever your answer would be, you should do the same thing for sign language. Apply that equally. That's everything I'm asking for, just to hold sign language at the same level as you hold or you would treat any other spoken language that you don't know. So let's say, your answer is to use Google Translate to translate it and you try to wing it, no matter what language it is. I see you. And that is why I made this next slide. Voila. And I actually have one more surprise. Let's go ahead and talk about some resources that I listed out here. You're thinking like, but Annie, I thought you don't want us to use Google Signs. Okay, okay, well, you got it. But technically, no. Like the act of looking up signs isn't a crime, but instead, I want you to go ahead and approach it with this curiosity and tact, as would you do with any other new language that you don't know, and to acknowledge the risk of errors that might happen as you navigate this. Yes, I acknowledge that I've mentioned that I want to see more sign languages, but only have ASL as a resource on this slide. I get it. It might sound like it might be a little bit, hypocritical of me, but I'm sorry about that. It's just solely because of the fact that if I want to list out everything, there'll be like 100 more slides, and I can't vet everything personally as I don't know the languages. I can't tell if it's right or not, nor can I find a master list of free courses of each sign language. So if you ever happen to run across one, please don't hesitate to share it with me because I'd be more than happy to have a blast with it. And as for now, we have Dr. Bill Vickers for ASL, which I've personally vetted, and I love his ASL lessons. The same thing with Handspeak. It's another great alternative for ASL. And Wikipedia master list of the sign languages, this is easily one of the ways you can find a sign language suited to your comic setting. From there, you can just start rolling up your sleeves and put in the hard work. However, some sign languages might not be recorded enough to compare to bigger languages such as ASL and British Sign Language. But again, I'm a big believer that more of us should try something than never. And lastly, Gallaudet University Press, a collection of the books about deaf and signing community. Now, this is a good way to, if you want to start learning more about the history and linguistics of sign language, this also includes Black ASL. And I've always found a way to stand on my soapbox and tell people about it, just not just my linguistics professor did to us in my freshman year, but Black ASL is an endangered language due to assimilation and white supremacy. So this part of the call to action is to preserve the language. I encourage you to read all about it. And so, side note, this is a presentation about sign language representation in comics. And so, if you're not a black nor speak AAVE, I can't nor would I suggest you to use a dialect of ASL for your black character because it's heavily rooted in AAVE and it feels inappropriate for me to otherwise. However, if you are deaf or black and are willing to work with a deaf black community, then yes, it would be wonderful to see a comic with black ASL in it someday. But we should add these links to the YouTube channel, and I'm willing to share the slides too to the Cartoonists United, so you guys can get clicking. And I do have socials, and I have Instagram, and I have uh, after getting older, I've come to the conclusion that I really, really hate being online. So, like, please don't look at me, and I don't want to be perceived a certain way. So, if you want to follow, but don't expect anything from me for a while. And here's my socials right here. I go by Purrata with three R's for Instagram. While for Blue Sky, it's Purrata with two R's. Oh, I just saw this right now. Yes, that comment right now. Yes. As far as Black Deaf Sign Language, yes, they have their own. I am not particular AAVE. So as far as being able to teach that or talk about that, no, but you can definitely find someone. They offer classes as well in those specific languages. And obviously they can give you feedback on all that stuff too. The last surprise is that I want to be able to do um, have everybody be able to be professional, and please email me. Let me know. I have all my information right here for you. And I have a ton of resources that I'll provide free proofreading ASL. And the best way to contact me is through Cartoonist United Discord and ping me by a professional cat petter. Or you can email me right here at pbjsww@gmail.com. And we can actually, anybody, one more thing, if any of you guys are native signers, you want to provide such services to know someone who can, especially for any other sign languages, please email me so I can promote you guys as we need to support each other in the comic world. So we can never get enough translators. Please email me. I can definitely provide you with some resources because this comic world, we can never have too many translators. So, I guess it's time now. We have for the Q&A, and let's see which questions I can answer to the best of my ability. I'm sorry, I'm still reading right now. I know I'm a little bit slow reading. So for this situation, it's a little bit weird as far as comics go. A lot of hearing people are comic writers, and in real, like let's see, it's a real life person is learning about this, and they give me some kind of sign name. As far as a comic writer coming up with a sign name, it's different than a deaf person coming up with a character's name in sign language. If someone's like studying that particular background in the community with the deaf, and later on, through the years, they ended up giving a hearing person one of their own sign names. Like it's a very like honorable thing. So as far as like writing a character who's hearing who doesn't sign, that wouldn't be a possibility. Or there should be something that they would actually be able to get a name sign or give a name sign if you're hearing. Let me go back up to the first question too. Making a sign name to give to a character. We in the deaf community and hard of hearing community, we have so many social, cultural things, and so when the sign community gives you a name, that's like a really big deal. It's like from a friend, like it's a cool perk that you get from your sign language community or your deaf friend. And that's the rule that only deaf or hard of hearing people can actually give sign names. So it can't be coming from a hearing person. That second question said, let me see. Like for as far as a comic, that I saw someone made a comic who was not deaf, but they created the English for a comic. Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm trying to get my mind to. I'm trying to figure that question out. Because if it's someone they worked with who is a deaf, a signer or someone involved with the comic industry as well, that might be the model that they chose possibly to be able to create that comic of a deaf person. See, the foundation of sign language has to be understood to be able to actually discuss it. If you're translating something from English to ASL, that in itself is something that needs to have professional translation too, or else it wouldn't make sense. Like the English to sign ratio, it wouldn't be just the sign language for it in English word order grammar because it still doesn't make sense completely. So it need to be professionally translated to actually make it equivalent. This one says translate. Let me see. Oh, that's actually a smart one. Sorry. I don't know if you guys saw that question, but I'm trying to answer the questions that pop up in order. But that would be cool to see the translated version in. But as far as using a sign language, you'd have to know ASL gloss to be able to use that too. So as far as ASL gloss goes, you'd have to understand how that even functions before you can utilize it. I'm trying to get through these questions. Okay, yeah, thank you. Actually, I appreciate that comment. Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm trying to get everything in here. I know it's been pretty a long list of Q&A. So a character who signs a lot, I have this question. How would you suggest that we emphasize the signs, like from a speaking character to someone who signs? How would you uh, how would you emphasize the facial and grammatical structure for the content? I would get an actual like deaf translator or someone to be able to show you the emphasis on those grammar marks as far as the non-manuals, like in the eyebrows, their facial affect. Because as far as someone signing, it has to have a certain structure, it has to look a certain way for it to be clear. Are there any other questions? Oh, sure, I saw you. Yeah. As far as answering for A deaf comic? Not that I've seen, but they have vocabulary lists that might include deaf, characters or in deaf comics maybe, and you know, the translation or the way it's signed or anything kind of falls off, and it isn't as intelligible. So I hope you all actually get to check it out on the webtoon and learn a little bit more from there. I see this one here says, so when illustrating someone doing a sign, or do you show all the signs? Well, it depends on the content as well. So, you always have to include the information from like the name sign or how they came to receive it, the signed explanation of that particular character. And that would actually be more real world applicable to be able to get down the points and understand it a lot more clearly. But yes, working with an actual professional translator.
And just to clarify, they were answering the question about collaborating with someone who's knows sign language. Right now, when illustrating someone doing sign, do you show all the signs or just with the speech balloon? I think that's why I provided two different examples earlier in the presentation where you're able to really, provide one, like the thought that they were having of one dance, but there wasn't sign language illustrated in it. It was just the thought that the individual was having. So, oh, my battery's dying soon with my laptop. I may have to move over so I can plug it in, but I think we should be okay. Any more questions? Okay, no worries. Yeah, my laptop is getting ready to die on me, so yeah. Oh, Lulo. Yeah, let me take a look. Yeah, so you were asking, you could look at the deaf web comic in the resource list that I gave you because I'm not exactly sure how to respond to that, but I will say that there are many deaf writers out there. So hopefully you can find a story that, is able to base their comics and illustrations on the actual signs and the culture. But it's a pleasure to meet you all as well. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Much love to everyone who showed up. I'm really so happy that you enjoyed the presentation and you came out. Thank you so much. Thank you again for coming. Yeah, and please reach out to me at any time, whether it's digital, if you need any kind of somebody to give you deaf eyes on your illustrations or your glosses, I'm here to support. And of course, it's no problem. I'm happy to have provided this presentation. Great. I think that's it. Yeah, yeah. Please do check it out. If you want to, see more wonderful presentations as the festival is wrapping up. Yeah, and please feel free to catch me on digital cards as well. And I'm always happy to reach out and have a conversation if you need any consultation. Bye, everyone. Bye. Much love. Much love. Bye. Thank you so much for coming.